Before we dive into this episode on selling your used panties with Dalma Rosa of the Panty Selling Podcast, I wanted to share with you 2 promo codes that Dalma has so graciously shared for the Strip by Sia audience. She is offering 20% off on all of her courses on pantysellingschool.com with code SIA at checkout, and 10% off all purchases on our clothing business, pantygasm.com, with code SIA at checkout. She is an incredible resource with a wealth of knowledge on selling used panties, and her clothes are super cute for any sex worker out there. Be sure to take advantage while you can. Now, let's get into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am over the moon and super delighted and excited to bring on today's guest, but of course I'll introduce myself. I'm Steph Sia, or Kimchi on stage. I'm a digital content creator online. I am also a stripper. Find me on stage this month at Shakers, and a former sugar baby, and I speak about all different, aspects of sex work. And I am going to be talking to you today about the corner of sex work that is selling used panties, which I'm really excited to get into. It's something I've never talked about on the show, and I'm bringing on pretty much an expert in the field who goes by the name of Miss Dalma Rosa. Dalma, can you say hello?
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me on the show.
You are so very welcome. I am so excited. Dalma is the host of the Panty Selling Podcast. She also has a pantysellingschool.com, sex worker Rolodex. We're going to get all into it today. We're going to try to get into it all. There's just a lot to talk about this morning and your afternoon. So, because you're joining us from
Scotland. Yes.
Yeah.
8 hours ahead of you, I think, something like that.
Oh yeah, yes, it's
right? Yeah.
it's a lot of time. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get into things, but it's really, really funny how we met, and I kind of want to share the story because I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we met on Reddit. We are in like a subreddit. I think I had seen your username, and it was something about your username, and then beside it says Panty Selling Podcast, and I was like, what the heck? Okay, I have to get this person onto the show. So I messaged you, and I'm like, you have to come on the show. And you're just like, really? Have you seen what the title of my podcast is about?
Yeah. Well, like I said to you, the reason that I did that was because I get random messages from people, emails usually, saying, I'd love to come on your show, or I'd love to have you on my show. And I'm like, do you know what my show is about? Like, seriously, because they're just cold calling. They're just like, I'll just send this message to everyone and hope that something sticks. So when I got your message, and bear in mind that this was on the actual thread, which was to do with podcast numbers.
Yes.
I just assumed, like, even though my name is there and it's the Panty Selling Podcast, I was like, there's no way this person knows what my podcast was about. But then another sex worker podcast jumped on the thread as well. So it was like a sex worker podcast convention. It was just the best thing ever. So we absolutely hijacked that thread.
It was awesome. And that other person was like, oh, about feet fetishes and stuff too.
Yeah.
And they have a podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah, it was just such I don't know, it was like a weird synchronicity that we all came together on the same thread at the same time. Exactly.
Which I think is great. But let's just rewind it back a little bit. I only know like a little bit about you. I mean, since I've met you, which is like a week ago, I have since then listened to about 20 to 21 of your episodes already. I'm hooked on it. It's so great. Even though I have like no experience in panty selling, I have sold other items like socks and stuff. But I mean, it's kind of similar, but not. There's a lot of overlap and applicable tips and advice that can be applied to any forms of sex work, which is another reason why I love your podcast. It was super, super relatable. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's funny because I have actually considered changing the name of the podcast before, although I wouldn't do it now because it's so established, but precisely for that reason, because sure, like that is what it is about in the majority, but it's also, it covers like so many other aspects, you know, to do with just online sex work and just life in general. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's maybe not got the right name, but you know, it is what it is, and I'm not going to change it now. But
no,
yeah,
it's great. I love it. But I just want to say, did I give you the correct intro? Because again, I was like, I only know a little bit, but if you want to give yourself your own introduction, feel free to go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, literally what you said. I became a panty seller a couple of years ago, and from that, I started doing the podcast. And after I'd been doing the podcast for a short while, I then created my website, which is pantysellingschool.com. And more recently, I've created like a clothing website called Pantygasm, and then like literally 2 or 3 weeks ago I launched the SW Rolodex, which is basically Fiverr for sex workers. I don't know if your listeners or even you are familiar with what Fiverr is, but it's a freelance job engine. And I was like, you know, and this literally played out on my Twitter a few weeks ago. I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a Fiverr for sex workers? Because Lord knows, you know, we need like help with, you know, certain parts of sex work that we're maybe not good at or we maybe don't enjoy.
Definitely.
And then I was like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to make it then. So I did. And yeah, that's literally just launched as well. So yeah, I keep myself busy for sure.
Yeah. And it's just exploded. Like, it's just mind-blowing. Like, you just started this whole line of work 2 years ago, and now you have a podcast, you have pantysellingschool.com, you have all their facets, the other two that you mentioned as well. Like, it's so crazy. Did you ever think it was going to go this far?
No, not at all. Absolutely not at all. I mean, I only intended on doing the whole, you know, selling panties thing for a few months because I was in a bit of a predicament, you know, financial wise. And so, you know, I had no intention whatsoever. Like, if anyone would have said to me back then, oh, by the way, you're still going to be doing this in 2 years, and you're going to be teaching other people how to do it, and you're going to be doing this, that, and the other, you know, I would never, well, I mean, I probably would have believed it because it sounds like something crazy that I would do. But yeah, it was only ever meant to be a short-term, you know, help for a financial situation. And here we are now, 2 years down the line. So it's crazy. It's really crazy.
So nuts. And now you're on the show here. So that's really cool. Did you want to tell the story about how you got started exactly to the audience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a very conventional story. I guess everybody has their own, you know, everyone has their origin story with regards to sex work. And I never even considered it as sex work when I was doing it. Like, I was so naive. I had no experience of anything. Like, I consider myself a really vanilla person. And so to move into fetish work is just really insane. But essentially what happened was I was looking for a way to make some additional money for a 6-month period. And I was, you know, considering all kinds of things. I was listening to the Side Hustle Nation podcast because they sort of like cover different ideas, you know, to help give you inspiration or motivate you and stuff like that. So, you know, I even considered like fucking making dog biscuits. I really was just like prepared to do anything that seemed possible.
Right.
And on one of their blog posts, it was like 100 ideas on how to make money online. I was scrolling through it and I was sort of like writing down notes of things that I would be, you know, willing to consider. And I came across Panty Deal, which is the biggest panty selling platform in the world. And so I was like, oh, wow. Well, you know, I've watched Orange is the New Black. Like, you guys
love that show.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So I was like, well, that sounds like fun. Like, I could do that. That's exactly the kind of zany, weird thing that I would do, you know, because, you know, like that. And that was it. I literally signed up the next day. It was a $19 premium subscription, which I didn't have that kind of money to just throw around, but I thought, well, you know, fuck it. So I did it, And that was it. You know, I threw myself into this strange new world. I didn't know anything about panty sniffing, panty wearing, you know, the panty. Anything that I was seeing on Panty Deal, I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I have no idea. What are these women doing? What are they selling? That's insane.
Wow.
So, you know, in some ways that probably worked out well for me because I wasn't going in with any preconceived ideas or expectations. And so it was just like a blank slate, you know? So yeah, and the rest is history. That was kind of it.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What a story. And now it's like led you here. And oh my gosh, let's go back to that time when you first started. Like, what kind of things did you see? Like, were you scared at all when you got into Panty Deal and like, were like, what is this?
I don't know if I was scared as much. I mean, I probably should have been scared because, like I said, I went in with no clue as to what I was doing. So I made some pretty bona fide fuck up mistakes, which we can talk about later on. But I was more overwhelmed really, and more like, oh my God, what have I let myself in for? Because this sure doesn't look as easy as I kind of thought it might be. Totally. You know, and then I saw things like, obviously I saw a lot of explicit content. Like, I didn't know that Panty Deal would be selling videos, and it was, and pictures, and you know, like Shark Week items and stuff like that. So it was an education. But I was determined because I was so wanting to make back that $19. Like, that's how ridiculous it was. I was like, I just need to make that money back, and then you know, that's fine. Like, I can call this just a silly mistake. Totally. But you know, it didn't take long to kind of figure things out. But you do sort of feel like the new girl at school when you first join a platform like that. You're going to feel out of place and awkward, and you know, nobody knows me, and I bet they all know each other, and you know, all that kind of stuff. It's perfectly natural to feel that way, for sure.
Yeah, and there's so many platforms out there. Like, did you want to speak a little bit about the platforms that you started on, the platforms that you're on now?
Sure. So I started on Panty Deal, and it probably, you know, it was maybe like a couple of months, I think, before I started looking at other platforms. You know, again, which is a fairly common thing that happens. People join a platform, and then they get this idea that it makes sense to join every platform or like multiple platforms. And that's not necessarily the case, because actually what you can end up doing is spreading yourself too thin across all these platforms. But I made it my mission. This was like a few months later, to join every platform, because I wanted to be able to teach other people, or like, you know, give my advice about what platforms were worth it and what platforms weren't. So I actually ended up joining like multiple platforms, probably around the 6-month mark in my own journey. And it was good because it meant that I was able to say, you know, like, here are the pros and cons of this platform, and, you know, help other sellers with regards to whether they should invest in that platform or not. So I became a kind of like a voice in the community for knowing what each platform had to offer, you know, and helping others. But that is the question that I get asked the most. Well, one of the questions that I get asked the most is, what platform should I join? And normally my advice is Panty Deal, which is the biggest, it is the busiest, but that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, it's the greatest, because what you'll find is that each platform has, you know, its own, it's like they're alive. It's weird. It's like they have their own culture, they have their own community vibe, they have their pros and their cons. Panty Deal is the biggest. All Things Worn is another big one. Scented Pansy is another long established platform. And then there are, you know, a huge amount of smaller platforms, and there are new ones coming out all the time. So I just, you know, I interview platforms on my blog. And I ask them the same questions to give them the same like opportunity to, you know, say to the community what they're all about and stuff like that. And you know, there's new ones coming out, and unfortunately, like, sometimes they just don't last. Like, they just kind of, it feels as if someone goes, oh, it's a great idea, let's open a platform, and then, you know, they realize that actually it's a lot of hard work, and getting buyers and sellers to come and hang out there is difficult, and then they just kind of like disappear into, you know, another realm. So, you know, there's a lot out there. There's new ones coming out all the time. You have to find the one that works for you. But if you're brand new, then I suggest one of the bigger ones is the best place to start.
Great. Okay, cool. We'll definitely keep that in mind. Also, like, wanting to speak about the content and making great content, because there's, you know, maybe a common misconception, like, say in terms of like, say with like OnlyFans, you know, people are just like, oh, you just sell nudes and you'll just get money. And then I think with panty selling, people are just like, oh, you just like, you know, you wear underwear all day and then you just like send it to someone. No, like there's a lot more that goes into that. And as you said, like there are other things on the website, like videos and stuff like that, that people can purchase. Did you want to speak a little bit on content?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, that is a very important first point to make, is that these platforms are not like eBay or Amazon, right? It's not like you're just posting something and then people are all like sitting there ready to buy. They're more akin to a social media platform, right? You hang out there, you spend time there, you become known there, you engage there.
Right.
And then that's how you're building the know, like, and trust factor. So it's an important, you know, differentiation to make, that this isn't eBay, this is like Facebook, right? This is what this is all about. And therefore, it takes a lot of time and effort and energy to do all the things associated with, you know, essentially building a business, which is what you're doing here. You're building a brand, right? You are the brand, because these guys aren't buying panties because they want a pair of panties. They're buying your panties because they want your panties, right? And that is, you know, that's the biggest misconception, I think, of people that come into this and think, oh, it's great, I'll just like list some socks and panties and then they'll disappear. And then the second thing is, like, when people join platforms, like I've already alluded to, you find out that there's a hell of a lot more than just panties being sold on these platforms. So of course it's everything that you can wear, like everything, like, not just underwear, t-shirts and jeans, and of course all of the foot fetish items like socks and shoes and pantyhose and stockings and things like that. And then there's the digital content, so all of your picture sets, all of your videos, pre-made and custom requests. And then there would be like live sessions for sexting or for doing cam, you know, and then there's all the extraneous weird and wonderful, like, you know, hair or toenail clippings or
spit,
you know, or spit, exactly. So really the world is your oyster there, and you know, it can be a little bit like, oh my god, like I didn't realize I could sell this as well, and people go a little bit crazy and like list everything, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But another mistake that people make is they come on and then they just like want to sell everything all at once. And it's like, you know, and I was guilty of that as well. It's like, put an advert out for this and this and this and this and this. And, you know, the most important thing really is to build it long and slow, I think. Again, a lot of people think, oh, I'll come in and I'll get rich quick and it'll be easy and stuff like that. Like, building a brand takes time. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit more structured and organized in your approach. And what my experience has been is that the ones that, you know, make it, and when I say make it, I mean last more than fucking 3 months in this industry, are the ones that don't rush, don't try to like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, but just have a more consistent long-term view about the whole thing. And then, you know, like I said, build it long and slow, and they do better.
For sure.
This has a huge dropout rate, massive, because people come in with the wrong expectations, or they don't realize how much work it takes, or, you know, they're just not prepared to put in the time and the effort into it. So yeah, it's a crazy industry.
Yeah. And it's you brought up so many great points there too. Like, one, it's a community, you know, as you mentioned, and you're building relationships with the buyers. And it's not just like, as you said, Amazon, and you're going to list items and people are just going to buy it. Like, you want to build that relationship with the community there. People can get to know you. And then, as you said, they're buying your panties, something personal, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. And the same goes for OnlyFans as well. It's like a random guy might find you attractive, but he's going to want to pay to follow you when he gets to have a better idea of who you are and what you're all about. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he's not just paying some random person. It's because he wants to follow you and see your content, whatever that is. So
exactly. Yeah, because there's just like a lot of, you know, there's free porn everywhere, you know, like... But again, they're wanting to buy something that's yours, something that's connected to you, connected to your personality. It's a huge point. I feel like sometimes a lot of people that I talk to, they're missing that element. So I'm so glad you brought that up because it's so important and sometimes often missed. And then, as you said, people just drop out and give up and, you know, like, I tried it and, you know, it sucks. It didn't work for me. I'm like, well, your strategy is kind of like not the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'll put my hands up as well and say that in the beginning, like I said, when you're the new girl at school, you kind of feel like you have to fit in and you're like, well, how's everyone else doing it? I'll just do it like that as well. And so that's what I did for the first short period of time that I was on Panty Deal. And then, like, I still remember the morning that I was just in my kitchen and I just had this kind of like, fuck this shit moment. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to post on the main wall, like, you know, whatever Facebook used to have a main wall, just like whatever I feel like just, you know, something silly or stupid or funny or whatever it is, right? Because that's the kind of person I am. And I just like, it was so liberating to go, do you know what? I'm just going to be me. And I'm going to stand out for the very fact that I'm not trying to be every other person on this platform. And so that was like a key moment in my selling, if you like, where all of a sudden it also became fun, right? Because it was like, oh, okay, I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not anymore. I can just be me and I can have fun and I can like start to enjoy this for a change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand if people are really in a difficult financial situation, that the pressure to make sales is huge, and that can sort of, you know, unfortunately, drive sales away because you become this sort of like, there's like a desperation or a falsehood about you because you're just like, you're more focused on you and you needing to make sales than, you know, having fun, enjoying yourself, and also being there for your customer, which is like paramount. So yeah, it's quite common.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember like something that you said on your show as well, on your podcast, you mentioned like you have to be like a customer service champion to be in this kind of business. You know, like you have to practice that great customer service, and you have to be like responsive and polite for the most part, unless they're disrespectful.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
all that stuff.
You don't have to be, but it makes sense from a business perspective. Like, you know, and that's why I keep trying to remind people, I'm like, right, okay, just think of if you were any other business online or on the high street, whatever, like your customer is your number one priority. Why? Because they're the goose that lays the golden egg. Like if you provide this amazing experience for them, they're going to pay more money for you, right? That's just the way it is. But at the same time, like, I get it. If there are, you know, rude or abusive individuals that you've had to experience in this work, it can make it difficult. Like one of the major challenges I feel in sex work is not to become a really cynical fucking man-hater, quite frankly. Like there was two things came up this morning that I shared on my stories. Like one was a kind of like, you know, apparently he's a decent enough guy, but it was a very manipulative request. And then the second one was, you know, a horrific, like, you know, I don't even want to talk about it here, but you know, those kinds of things come up, and it's very difficult to compartmentalize just the idiots that you'll have to contend with, whilst also simultaneously running with the, you know, customer satisfaction thing. So of course there are, you know, amazing customers out there, and I've had the privilege of, you know, touch wood, I've had a lot of really great customers, but it just really comes down to keeping in mind that your customer isn't just, and this is the mistake that I made in the beginning, like it was very transactional. It was like, oh, he bought panties, great, on to the next one, right? Rather than going, oh, he bought panties and there's potentially quite a few $100s left in, you know, it doesn't sound very kind, but you know, there's a few $100s that could come down the pipeline if I maintain a great relationship with this person, not from a disingenuous place, like not ever pretending to be, you know, friendly towards someone that I didn't want to be, but just going, oh, okay, like I've already done the hard work with making that guy want to buy from me. He's no longer a cold customer. He's like a hot customer, right? And he's going to buy again, you know, I'm sure of it, because I provided this amazing service for him. So it's common sense, it's logical, but also just recognizing that we are operating in a space where there are not nice guys as well.
Yes, and we'll definitely get into that part later. Lots of not nice people out there, but sticking on the content conversation, you know, like what are the buyers looking for? And I know it can vary, but generally speaking, what do your buyers look for? What makes a great, I guess, panty?
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing as well. Like I said, in the beginning, I didn't fully understand the fetish. So there are, you know, buyers that want to purchase the panties because they want to sniff them, right?
Yes.
You know, and enjoy them, like, from that perspective. So, you know, and the thing, like, there is no one average like every single customer is different. Like, you know, a lot of my customers are quite happy with just like a standard 1 day wear, but then of course there are customers that want like multiple days wear, and then there are customers that want, you know, added essence on the panties, right? So like you would refer to them as add-ons. Okay. So that's the panties, right? And then, you know, there are buyers that want to buy panties because they intend on wearing them, right?
Yeah,
so that's like,
thing too.
That's a separate beast, if you like. But the good news is that you don't have to try and figure that out and, you know, necessarily market to different customers. Like, of course, guys that want to buy panties may not be interested in watching your pre-made video of you in the shower, right? That might just not appeal to them at all. But they might be interested in a video of you wearing panties, right? So, you know, of course, like, it's interesting to me to go, okay, right, you know, there's lots of different customers. I can't necessarily appeal to every single one with one advert. And maybe I want to do multiple adverts to appeal to the different types of customers that are out there. But what I do know is that if they just are attracted to me, that, you know, chances are I can sell them sort of, you know, whatever they're looking for. But the reason they're buying isn't necessarily because they like the pink Victoria's Secret panties that I have. It could be that, but it's because it's me. So, you know, just going back again to, it's always about you. And the more you can sort of share, you know, the essence of who you are, your personality, your brand, all that kind of stuff, and they can connect with it, then really content is secondary, right? Or trying to second guess all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like, I'm always about, like, I realize that not every single guy is interested in me, right? I mean, surprise. Right? The ones that really are and really want to buy from me, so that it's only them I'm interested in working with. And again, this is like a real fucking mindset shift for a lot of people, is that they come on and again they try to appeal to everyone, and when you try to appeal to everyone you end up appealing to no one, right? It's like, you know, who are you fucking talking to, right? So for me, I always wanted the boomers, right? I wanted Gen X and boomers because that's my age and up, right? Because I felt like, well, not only have they got more money, quite frankly, but I can relate to them, right? We have a lot in common, and I know, you know, so we could hold really good, interesting conversations and make that connection on that way. So, you know, when I was doing my marketing or my advertising or whatever, those were the guys I was talking to, and those were the guys that I wanted to talk to. So I don't know, does that answer your question? It's again, it always comes back to like, who am I and who am I here to serve, right? Those are the two things that I feel like top all of the sort of like sales strategies. And
no, it makes a ton of sense too. Like, one, you have to know who your audience to, so you can properly advertise to them, and then obviously you want to keep your own integrity and your core values close to you as well, because that's like also really important. And you mentioned that on your podcast as well, like, you know, what are your boundaries? It's okay to have boundaries. Absolutely. Everyone has boundaries, and like that's super, super important to keep in mind. So I guess, why don't we talk a little bit about clients? So this is like a big topic in terms of like, well, one, where they come from, and then we can kind of go into safety and stuff too.
Sure.
So I don't know where you want to start. Like, this is a huge thing.
Well, again, I just want to talk about this because this is another sort of common mistake that comes my way when sellers decide that they're going to go down this route. You know, they may decide to sell on social media, or Reddit, or they'll join a platform. Right. And my advice is always join a platform, right? And I'm not paid by platforms to say that, but the point is that, you know, you've got hundreds or thousands even of customers that are there and ready to buy. I mean, maybe not necessarily on that specific day, but the platforms are doing the hard work for you, right? They've got the customers through the door. They're there, right? It's like, why wouldn't you? But don't get me wrong, like, I know sellers who sell on Reddit. They join all of the, you know, the subreddits that they need to join, and they do well as well. But for me, it's like, I don't know, like I always preferred platforms personally, just because, you know, some of them have really great functionality and there's lots of, you know, cool things that you can do and connect with people. So, you know, it depends on your particular vibe. But like I said before, the buyers that are on these platforms are looking for everything. Like, you know, they're looking for all the digital stuff, all of the worn stuff, you know, and everything else in between. So you can be guaranteed that you're going to find your guys there.
For sure. Yeah. Like, for yours, I mean, I guess if you want to speak a little bit about your own clients too, I believe that you mentioned in your show, like, a lot of them come from the USA.
Yes. I mean, that does tend to be where the biggest audience is. You know, don't get me wrong, there are buyers across Europe. I'm going to say Australia, but Australian guys tend to buy from Australian sellers because, you know, it's the arse end of nowhere. But, you know, saying that as well, though, there are guys that are wanting, you know, exotic panties from across the pond or whatever. So, you know, you could have UK buyers wanting American sellers and vice versa. But yeah, I tended to attract, obviously, older gentlemen, because that's who I wanted to attract. Yes. And they tend to be, I'm going to say like 85% were American, and then the rest European. Yeah. Wow. Actually, like the furthest, I sent panties to New Zealand, so that's pretty far.
That's far, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where else was like the furthest. I did do, was it Vietnam? Or somewhere like that.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah. Really like far-flung
places.
International global seller. And again, I found all those guys on Panty Deal. So
amazing. Yeah. Holy crap. I mean, like, when you're shipping contents out, have you had many issues and like in terms of like packaging or getting intercepted at all? Like, can you tell us a little bit logistics or?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I've not had any pair. No, that's a lie. I had one pair go missing. But that was at the beginning of the Corona thing. So, you know, Lord knows what was happening with the post at that point. But other than that, I've not had any pair like just completely not arrive. I've had them, like one pair I sent to New York. Oh my God, they took 3 months to get there.
What? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Insane. I know. I don't even want to imagine what that looked like around. But yeah, the only trouble that I had was I used to live in Spain until a few months ago, and the women at the post office, because I know you can, depending on what country you're in, it can be relatively easy just to package things up, stick the appropriate amount of stamps or postage on it, and then, put it through a post box and not have to deal with anyone.
Yeah.
But because I never knew how much stuff was going to cost, because it was going everywhere.
Yeah.
I always went into the post office, and one of the women behind the counter, so she couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Spanish, so it was always a palaver. But she really disliked me. I could just tell she disliked me. And I could tell that she didn't believe that what I said was in the package was in the package. So every time I went in, it was either her or this other woman, and I would always just fucking pray that I got the nice woman, because the other woman, she just didn't like me at all. I never had any major issues. I always made sure that there was adequate postage to cover it. I would say that it was socks mainly that I was posting, unless it was a big item, but if it's soft, then you can say it's any item of clothing.
Yeah.
And because eBay exists, then, it's perfectly reasonable that you would be sending clothes worldwide, if you're selling stuff on eBay.
Totally.
So yeah, I did have one problem one time. A gentleman had ordered beard oil that he wanted to have an additional essence inside it.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, so posting liquids was not permitted, so I had to lie. I can't remember what I ended up hiding it inside of an ornament and then posting the ornament. So I had to be really, creative with that. Yeah. But yeah, other than that, I've not had any issues.
That's so interesting. That's awesome. I guess in terms of packaging the products, because when I've shipped out my socks before, I used to always put them in a Ziploc bag. Is that what, in terms of scent, is that what you do as well? I know some people do vacuum seal and stuff as well.
Yeah, some people do vacuum seal, and I kind of I'm just gonna be honest here and say sometimes I feel I'm not a seller because I don't use a vacuum sealer. I've never used one. I just can't be bothered with them. No, what I do is I wrap really tightly. If it's a pair of panties, for example, I don't care about aesthetics. I care that it's going to get there and be very scented, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So I wrap it really tightly at the gusset area, and then sort of fold it really tightly, and then I wrap that in saran wrap. Then I wrap that in tissue paper, and then I put that in a Ziploc bag, and then it goes in the envelope. So yeah, that's I sort of triple wrap it.
That's a good idea.
It doesn't honestly, I could never get a job in a gift store or anything like that. I'm not very good at it, but it arrives and it's as good as it can be.
Interesting. Oh my gosh, because I just can't imagine. I mean, some of the requests, I'm sure that you may have encountered. Are you ever worried about maybe panties molding or anything like that?
No, they don't go in wet. Normally they get dried out before they get posted, and then your gentleman on the other side can rejuvenate them with a spray of mist, a water mist or something like that can help bring them back to life. I've never posted anything wet. It's not a good idea.
No.
Especially if it is going to go astray in the post for a few extra days or weeks. That's not going to be pleasant when it arrives.
I can't imagine. I just
can't.
But
there are guys that are requesting. I mean, I haven't sent any myself, but panties that have been peed on. So yeah, I imagine they're pretty fragrant when they arrive.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if they mold.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought do they or do they not?
Yeah.
It's a question.
I don't know. It's an experiment I'm willing to not do.
Yeah. You haven't had any bad reviews in regards to moldy panties, so that's good.
I haven't, thankfully.
No. I guess, like, going back to shipping, do you require, like, a return address, though, when you're shipping these out? Or, I mean, when I used to ship my socks out, I used to always write, like, a fake address.
Yes. So, again, when I was really new, I had heard, like, and this was my first pair of panties that I was shipping out, and they were going to, like, the Netherlands or something like that, I can't remember. And I had heard from other sellers, because I joined some sellers groups and stuff, and they're like, oh, just use the customer's address as the return address.
Oh.
Which I thought, right, okay, well, fair enough.
Oh, no.
So, and that is still advice that people are giving out today, and
Really?
I don't think it's good advice, and here's the reason why. So I'm standing in this post office in Spain, and, it's a computerized system, which it isn't exactly the same in the UK. Like, they don't put the return address in the computer. Anyway, so she's like, she's putting the details in and everything, and then she's like, hang on a minute, and she's like turning the package back and forth over, and she's like, you've put the same address here, like that's not right, it can't be the same address. Obviously it can't be the same fucking return address. So she was like, like, I'm not stupid, like, change the address. So I was kind of caught on the fly there. I was like, shit, I had to come up with like a false address under duress. So, for that reason, like, your post office worker, if you are going into the post office, like, it might work if you're just sticking it in the letterbox.
Right.
But if you're having to go into the post office, they're not stupid. They'll be like, oh, that's the same fucking address. So yeah, you should use a fake address. People pick like police offices or like McDonald's restaurants or, hotels and stuff like that. Which isn't ideal if you think about, like, there's bound to have been panties returned to sender.
Yeah.
So it's happened a few times, and these poor people that are receiving the package. But that's another reason to make sure it's, like, really, really wrapped up so that they maybe, like, give up and just go, I'll just put it in the bin.
I love that. I guess, like, with that conversation, did you want to speak a little about security and safety?
Yeah,
that's a huge thing.
I mean, again, like I said in the very beginning, I made some so ridiculous mistakes. In the beginning, I gave out my WhatsApp number to a guy. Has my real number.
Crap.
I spoke about this yesterday actually on my Instagram and TikTok, that I also, in the beginning, didn't switch off my location settings on my phone when I was taking pictures. Yeah. I had a customer. Thankfully, he's a really nice guy, and, we're still in touch. He's still a customer. And he messaged me and it was like, I know where you live because your latitude and longitude is embedded in your picture. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. Also, I had used images on the platform that were uploaded elsewhere on the internet, like, random places. So again, same customer, thankfully, was like, and also these images uploaded are on these websites, and so now I know your real name as well. So just all kinds of stupid fucked up mistakes. I also, for my first customer, gave him my real PayPal. My normal PayPal that I was using at the time, because that's how naive I hadn't even set up a payment system. Like, it hadn't even dawned on me like how I was going to take payments. So when this guy offered to, like, buy pictures off me, I was like, yeah, sure, okay, well, I guess I'll just give you my normal PayPal, which had my name on it and everything. So yeah, those are the mistakes that I've made, and those are the ones that are really pretty important that you don't as well. So yeah, you want to have obviously set up your seller name, which is your fake name. Mm-hmm. Take brand new pictures for your stuff. It should not be like, even if you have lovely pictures that you've used on your social media somewhere or on another website, don't use them, because people will reverse Google image search and find them. Make sure your phone location settings are switched off when you're taking pictures that you're going to use in your business. And even further, there are apps, EXIF apps, EXI, that will strip that information from your images.
Right.
And obviously set up payment systems that aren't like the ones that you're using for your normal life under your normal name.
Yeah.
All those kind of things. And I'm definitely not even an expert, but also don't be emailing people, like your customers, like don't email them, like images attached or accept things that they're sending you with attachments or things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So much there, because the last thing you want is like a stalker or anything like that. Like, have you ever had any scary run-ins with any of your buyers at all? Or, I mean,
no, touch wood, I haven't, but it does keep me up at night sometimes when I'm lying there going, I have been so lucky so far. I've definitely had super fans, right? Like guys that are like, oh my God, nobody's ever said that they love me, thank God. But super fans that come in and like just buy everything, or or I don't know, like all that kind of stuff. I will say that it's dawned on me more, and this might sound bizarre, that actually from doing the podcast and the educational side of things, that I'm opening myself up more to stalkers than I did when I was actually, doing the whole panty selling thing. Like, right. Weirdly, I feel like I've put myself out more now doing this than I ever did with that. And so it feels more vulnerable, and I feel more open to, stalkery behavior. But sometimes even from sellers themselves, like other women have, been a bit weird. So I'm always a little bit, I'm like, it's always an area that I'm kind of like, I really hope that doesn't happen, because that would be horrific.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, I mean, and speaking of other horrific situations, I remember you mentioned a couple times in the show that like you've encountered pedophiles too on the website. Yeah. That is really scary.
Well, that's what I sort of mentioned earlier when I was like, I don't really want to go into it because I don't like to give it the airtime, but certainly an unfortunate side of this, getting into this work, is the realization of just how many of them there are out there.
Right.
And I am a mother of 2 children, and so not that there's anyone out there that isn't obviously triggered by that, but as a mother, it's like it really, really affects you, and it's just, there's nothing to say about it because it's so heinous. It's an unfortunate part of being in this industry, is that you will come face to face with that, even if it isn't you personally. If you're in a group with other sellers and they experience it, then everyone experiences it together.
It affects everyone. It's really scary knowing that information, but I also wanted to bring that up again, just to provide a really candid approach to this conversation, because this stuff does happen. And
absolutely. And that's another reason why, the glamorization, I guess, of sex work really galls me, because it's like, well, you have to give everybody this other side of things. Yes. Like, sure, there's like the downsides in terms of like burning yourself out, or, comparing yourself to other sellers and feeling shit about yourself. And then there's like next level dark fucked up shit, because there are guys with serious mental issues who hate women and will come on these platforms and fuck up your day or your week, right, with something they say. And thankfully, I know we've just talked about stalkers there. There was one guy / still is, who did actually stalk a couple of sellers, and the police had to get involved and all kinds of stuff. So like, I'm not going to sit there and go, hey, become a sex worker, become a panty seller and make lots of money and it's so much fun. It's like, no, it's all those things, but it's also really fucking dark at times. So yeah,
for sure,
keeping
it real, absolutely, that's what we're here for. I mean, on a more positive note, I love how much you talk about the community and your Kik groups, your Discord groups, and the community of sellers, and how supportive most people are. I would say most. Do you want to speak a little about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, very early on, I realized that what I was missing was community. And of course there was groups out there, but it wasn't overly obvious like where they were or how to find them or all that kind of stuff. And so I created one and I called it Sellers Before Fellas. And we were on Kick and it was great. And, you know, I was sort of like mentioning it on the platform, and I got, you know, loads of people joining, and that was great. And then I, you know, and I found other Kick groups as well and joined them. And I genuinely feel that having that community was what stopped me from quitting so many times, because just having other people there that you can bounce ideas off of or ask questions or just, you know, genuinely feel like you're not on your own, right? Because it is quite an isolating experience. Like, sure, you can be on a platform and you can make friends there, and, you know, All Things Worn and Scented Pansy are two platforms in particular where there's like a real good community vibe on them. But having something off-site where it's like we're all in this together, collaboration over competition and that kind of stuff, really it's a fun place to hang out. And I find myself on there like a lot during the day, just because, you know, you make friends and connections and get ideas as well. So yeah.
It's so great that you have that. And again, like, I feel even with your show, I feel like you created such a close and tight-knit community that people just really do support each other and really genuinely want to help each other out, because we all want to make money in the end.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And here's like the funny thing, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are sellers out there who are not like so keen about that whole thing, right? And actually when I was on, so I left Panty Deal, but when I was on Panty Deal, I got into a conversation with a long-term seller there, because Panty Deal's been going for like almost 10 years. It's a really long established site. Yeah. And she had told me, she was like, oh, you know, for a long time, sellers didn't help each other out because it was, you know, really competitive. And it's like, why would you share things that could basically take buyers away from you and all this kind of stuff? But that just never was my vibe, for the reasons that I've already shared about, like, well, I'm not going to take a buyer away from you, or you're not going to take a buyer away from me. If like he really digs me and he really likes my stuff and he wants to buy from me, it's like, how is there competition there? Right. And really what I've found is that the opposite tends to be the case. It's like when you step into, you know, not coming from that kind of like scarcity or competitive mindset, and when you actually like seek to contribute to your community, you actually make more sales. Like, it's a weird thing. No. So, you know, like, and that, obviously that's not the reason why I did it, but it was just like, whenever I came from that space of like, of course I want to help other people because I'm in this community and I want it to be a good community and a safe space and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it just became a no-brainer. It's like, I want to make things better, not worse.
Absolutely.
Not harder.
Yeah, no one, you want to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
And speaking of community, I guess we'll quickly go into the Sex Worker Rolodex, which is another project you've been working on. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it really was just a kind of, which most of my good ideas are sort of throwaway, weird ideas that I get in the shower or something like that. Like, I'm full of ideas. Yeah, I'm trying to remember now what prompted it, but I can tell you that I have used Fiverr, which is obviously the freelance engine, the job engine, for certain things to do with panty selling school, like just like infographics or, you know, basic stuff, like obviously nothing explicit. And I have had, you know, freelancers go, no, I'm sorry, like I'm not doing that because of the nature of your site or the nature of the content or things like that. And I'm like, right, okay, like, you know, obviously, you know, like we talked about in the beginning with the Reddit subreddit that we met on, there's always this hesitation because it's like, oh, I'm going to be judged or I'm going to be shamed for what I do or all that kind of stuff. Like, even though, you know, I've done a lot of work on that inner judgment, it's still there, right? You can still face that backlash. And so, you know, that's another important reason, because the truth is, like, you do have to wear so many hats in this business, right? You have to do sales and marketing and take your pictures and, you know, write your listings and do your social media and all that kind of stuff. And not everybody is great at all of those things. And so it makes sense to have a resource where sex workers can find the help that they need, and it be a safe environment where they're not going to be judged. Because what I've found is that a lot of the freelancers that have joined the SW Rolodex actually are sex workers as well, right? Who have to also double up as a video editor or a graphic person or a website person or something like that. So that's been like a really fun thing that's sort of like transpired. I didn't expect that to happen, but it has.
So cool.
And so every freelancer that joins has to be personally vetted by me, because I'm not about to open up a space where like every Tom, Dick and Harry that just wants to connect with sex workers and see their videos and stuff, like goes, oh, I'm a freelancer, right? So it's like they have to demonstrate their area of expertise or whatever.
For sure.
And so that was like that was a deal breaker basically from the beginning. If I couldn't do that, then it wasn't going to go ahead. And so, I mean, it's really early days. I think there's like, I don't know, less than 20 freelancers set up. I have to get the word out, because unfortunately, as a sex worker business, I can't run a fucking advert on Facebook or Instagram or, Twitter or anything like that to spread the word about my business. It has to rely on word of mouth to get around. So,
it's been hard.
It is what it is, but that's what I'm doing at the moment.
I'm hoping that this podcast will hopefully help get the word out as well. I also need to join because I offer a number of services too, so I have yet to join.
Actually, I should mention that there is a referral program as well, because I'm like, well, if I incentivize sex workers to, bring people to the site, then, everyone wins. There's a referral program. It's like, I'm not going to go through it, but you can check that out on the site.
I'll definitely check it out. And everyone listening better check it out too. It's so important to have safe spaces and not to be judged and for what you do, and, just to get the work done, especially if you are not specialized in certain aspects of the business. Like, it's okay to ask for help, but also not to be judged. So, there are a lot of questions that came in, so I definitely want to leave some time aside, even though I can literally keep asking you a lot more questions.
That's cool.
But let's just go into what the audience is curious about. So I'm sure you've heard of this question. We kind of briefly went over it, but what are the best sites to sell on? So platforms.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I will just, and I'm not sponsored by these sites at all. So I just want to make that clear. Panty Deal is the biggest and the busiest. Like I said, it comes with its own challenges, because you can imagine a busy, big marketplace also attracts a lot of scammers, things like that. So it's not ideal, but it's a good training ground, and it's busy. You will make sales there. Same for All Things Worn and Scented Pansy as well. So those are the top 3 that I recommend. If you're a new seller, there really is not much point signing up to a smaller site or a less busy site. I think you will learn a lot and quickly on a site where there's a lot of people interacting. So that's going to be my advice.
Awesome. How to price different objects?
Yeah, so I actually have, which I got done on Fiverr. So eventually I did find a graphic designer who was willing to do this for me, but I've made an infographic. Lord knows what she thought when she got that. Because, it's like all these different graphics for weird and wonderful items. Anyway, so that's on my website, pantysellingschool.com. There is a free pricing guide there. But generally, most panties start at $25 and up.
Right.
The biggest mistake that people make is they come onto a site, they price, and then they go, oh, I'm not making sales. I know what I'll do. I'll drop my prices, and then I'll make loads of sales. Doesn't happen.
No.
Not happen. Please don't do that. Panties starting at 25, and then like each additional day would have an additional price tag attached to it. Socks and pantyhose, again, 20 to 25 starting. I mean, really, like if you get requests for random pieces of clothing, it's generally the cost of replacing the item, plus wearing it, plus postage. And then, pictures and videos kind of depends on either the content or the length of them, but they're usually priced per minute. It's difficult because I don't like to, like, people are like, oh, you can't prescribe, I can't like tell everyone what to charge. I'm certainly not out trying to make everyone, well, I do think people should up their prices because they do tend to charge too little. But yeah, I'd probably, do you know what I'll do is I'll send you the pricing guide and then you can just link to it.
In the show notes. Yeah, for sure. We can definitely do that. Yeah, and like it really just depends on like what you're comfortable with and also like how you value yourself and your time.
Yeah. And also I will say that some of the feedback that I've had from sellers is that if they are selling off platform, like if they sell on Reddit or if they sell on Facebook Marketplace, which is
gosh, really?
Yeah. Or, if they were selling on like, I don't know, like a cam site or on their OnlyFans or something like that, that they can actually get even more than they might on a platform. So yeah, like different mediums seem to have varying prices. So yeah.
Different pricing structures, and good thing for bringing that up. And also Facebook Marketplace, who knew?
Yeah, I know. Insane. I did actually try and set myself up on Facebook with a brand new Facebook account.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Like you'd think I was trying to get a job in the CIA or something. It was like Mark Zuckerberg is not having any of it. Like they're on, if you try and set up a fake name, it's kind of like, and then the biggest turn off for me was that it started suggesting my real friends to me, and I was like, no, fuck this shit, right? You cannot trust social media. No. Like one of my friends found me on when I had a seller page on Instagram. He found and that was through fucking Instagram suggestions. So yeah, I'm like, I have such bad feelings about all of this social media stuff. I really, like, I came off Facebook completely when I started doing this because I was just like, I don't want anyone finding me.
Yeah. And honestly, I did have a bit of a chuckle when that episode came out and you're like, oh, my like close friend was like, oh, and like, how's your panty selling business going? And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Like, if he had done it over text, it might not have been as difficult, but it was face to face in a coffee shop where like I never knew it was coming. And I was just like, that thing. Oh my God, it was horrific.
I was mortified.
I seriously was mortified.
Oh my God. Do you offer one-on-one paid coaching?
Yes, I do. It's called Seller SOS, and I have that on my website. But I also do like a second thing, which is like if you have set yourself up as a seller on a profile, I will do a profile review, like review everything on your platform, like all of your pages and stuff like that. So that's a separate thing. That's called a one night stand. But yeah, Seller SOS is like a one-to-one call with me over Zoom.
Awesome. Love those names, by the way. What type of panties sell best? Thong, granny style, and what is the market like?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Really, everything sells. Everything. I will say, like, I've only ever had one request for granny style panties. That was from an older gentleman. Like, I don't think young guys are super into that kind of stuff.
Right.
But, over the years, I'd say probably thongs have been very slightly more popular, but like not noticeably so. Like, so panties have like 3 zones, if you like, right?
Okay.
So zone 1 is like pee. Zone 2 is, excretions, and zone 3 would be like a bum smell, right? So the guys that kind of like a little bit of ass smell would be more inclined to ask for a thong.
Right.
Yeah, but not everybody is into that. So yeah, like I'm gonna say between thongs and full back panties, there isn't a lot in it. So yeah, you don't like. I would have a mix of both of those things, both of those styles. If you only had thongs, I would definitely buy some full back panties just to have them on standby, because there are some guys that are like, no, I want the full backs.
Yeah.
As for the market is like really fucked up. It would be so interesting to see it from like a stock market perspective, like to see the ups and the downs and like how much panties are worth at this point in time. What can happen is that there can be surges. So especially since the advent of TikTok, if a TikTok goes viral and gets like fucking however many like million views or more, and is sort of like somebody that's kind of going, hey, I do this and it's great and I make money, and enough people see it, and especially if there's like platforms being talked about and stuff, what can happen is like there's a surge of sellers come in, and this has happened twice recently in the last sort of like 6 or 7 months. Yeah, and it can fuck things up big time. Like the first was an Instagram influencer who was like, hey, look at this is fucked up, right? And then like, I don't know, 1,000 people joined up in a couple of days. So thankfully, those kinds of events aren't all too common, but they can happen. But like I said in the beginning of the podcast, the dropout rate is so high that it's not like super inundated, but platforms do have to be constantly getting buyers in, because getting sellers to platforms really isn't a problem. You have to make sure that the customers are there to buy. But what I would say is like, as long as you're going in with a realistic expectation that you're not about to make like thousands of dollars in the first month or every month or anything like that, that you won't get too, you won't get too upset about the fact that there are maybe like other sellers that are doing it as well.
Right. Awesome. Great question. Thank you so much, whoever sent that in. I guess we already kind of went over in terms of what is the best website platform, but actually I have a question for you in terms of platforms. Do the platforms offer any analytics at all?
Yes, they do. I'd say probably, I was going to say that All Things Worn was probably the best at it, but to be honest, they'll all give you a little bit of something. It's not, like next level Google Analytics or anything like that. But generally, you'll get to see how many people have visited your profile. You'll get to see how many people have looked at a particular advert. So that's really useful as well, because you can see like what your most popular advert is, and then either replicate that or, or ones that are, when I say performing badly, it's not necessarily that they're performing badly. It could be for an item that just isn't that popular or isn't that popular at that particular time. So yeah, they will. And then All Things Worn and Scented Pansy have an order system that you go through. So yeah, actually I would say All Things Worn is probably slightly better, because it will give you analytics in terms of like how much you've made and all that kind of stuff associated to their order system.
I see.
So yeah, they do.
Very cool. Okay, back to listener questions. That's just from me. What do you think motivates the purchasers to buy used panties?
They're horny. Like,
yeah.
That,
in a simple sense.
Don't get me wrong, like obviously my husband knows what I do, and like whenever I've talked to him about it, he's crinkling his nose up and he's like, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't appeal to me. Like, I don't want to sniff your panties, I don't want to sniff anyone's panties, right? He's just not into it.
Yeah.
But it's very base. It's like primordial kind of like scent thing, right? Like this is what we've done for millennia, like men have sniffed us out or whatever. So yeah, it's very much like they get turned on by smelling, and it elevates their alone time, shall we say, with themselves. Like it takes it to the next level. So yeah, and then of course that's very different for guys that are wanting to buy pictures and videos. Again, it's the same thing. They're turned on, they're horny, and they're attracted to you, and the fact that they can actually message you and speak to you and then buy from you is like, it's like this intimate connection, if you like.
Right. Yeah. Very, very interesting for sure. Is there anything guys can sell?
Yes. So yeah. Yeah. So I've actually got a training called Seller Fella. Again. Yeah. So here's the thing that we have to be very clear on, because I've seen this a number of times, is guys come onto platforms and go, I know, I'm going to sell my dirty underwear to women, right?
Oh.
No. There is no woman out there wants to buy your dirty underwear, but there are men who want to buy it. So what happens is sellers, female sellers, will be approached, and I've had this myself, by a guy saying, can I have like a used condom, right? Or male items as well. And then what happened was All Things Worn actually branched to create a sister site, or a brother site, if you want, called Male Things Worn. So that is a site where men can sell their socks, their underwear, used condoms, whatever. But they're selling it to men. They're not selling it to women. Okay, so that's an important distinction that has to be made, because honestly, these guys are so fucking clueless. Like, read the room. Yeah. We're here to sell. We're not here to buy your stuff. Like, not a chance in hell.
There's no market for that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah. I learned something today. Oh, I like this question. What is your most memorable custom sale request?
Like anything at all?
Anything. Or... Yeah. Up to you how you want to answer it.
I'm just trying to remember. I mean, this was one that I got, but I didn't end up doing it.
Okay.
But this was for a video. A guy wanted me to brush my teeth ferociously, and then let the foam from my mouth go down to my armpit, and then rub it into my armpit. Yeah, so that was random.
Really random.
I'm trying to think of the weirdest thing that I did. Probably food crushing was probably as weird as it got for me. Like, most of my requests, I guess maybe because, I don't know, I was going to say because they're coming from older men, they tend to be more normal, but that's not true. No, most of my customer requests have just fallen within the sort of normal parameters. I've not been asked to do anything too weird, but I will recommend, just a little shout out whilst I'm here. The Deadly Sins podcast is run by two sex workers, and they did an episode on weirdest requests they've ever had. And actually, I'm not going to spoil it. You have to listen to it, but it involves a leprechaun, and it's just the fucking weirdest thing I've ever heard. But I'm actually quite disappointed now. I haven't had that many crazy weird requests.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to add that to my playlist then. Excited. Is it ever worth doing a bit of flirty messaging first, or all the serious buyers straight to the money?
This is such a great question, and this comes up a lot. I did something on this recently. I can't remember what it was. It might have been a blog post, but I only ever sexy talked once with one customer, and this again very early on in the beginning, and it was clearly he had his fun, and then that was it. He just never responded, and I was like, shit, I feel kind of used and a bit stupid, and I never ever did it again. I never have sexted with potential customers. I've always just had conversations with them. And, I'll be honest and say, none of my customers, even after they purchased, ever tried to turn a conversation sexual. It just never happened. So, but that's, it's worth noting that I don't offer sexting as a service. If that's something that you offered, then it would maybe kind of make sense to warm a guy up so that he's like, yeah, okay, I want to continue this so that I can, release. Because I only was selling worn items and then like pre-made videos and pictures and stuff like that. Like sexting just never really came into it.
Right.
Don't recommend it as a strategy.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, or if you want to test it out and see, then fair enough. But for me, it's like, I think you're running the risk of running into more men who will just use that, and then you'll never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And then you end up feeling like they've got something for nothing.
I completely agree with that. Like for me, I would definitely not use that as a strategy, because there's just guys that are wanting to talk to you all sexy and wanting to just get off of that. And it's such a huge time waster thing. And I just am not into it. And I would rather charge for that, and like letting them know that, hey, this is what I charge for this per minute. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it comes back to like, you know, for me, who's my ideal client? Mm-hmm. My ideal client is a guy that will not, you know, overstep boundaries in that respect, or expect that from me, you know, without paying for it, for sure. So again, it's like taking the power back and going, that's not my ideal customer, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And like there's a difference between like, you know, providing that good customer service and being polite, but then once it, for me, like that's a boundary that's crossed. Like I usually have some clients that will ask like, oh, may I ask you a question? And then I say, okay, well, that's crossing the line now. Yeah, and then now you have to pay me for this. So, because there's a lot of guys out there that they're just wanting to, like, as I said, just get off of talking to you. And I don't have time for that.
Nobody has time for that.
Nobody has time, exactly. And I guess the last question here is, how safe is panty selling?
Well, I guess that depends on from what perspective you're talking about. Like we have already covered the sort of like the main things you have to do with regards to protecting your identity, which is the main thing, right? I mean, none of us are out there using our real names and wanting people to know who we really are and then finding us on social media or anything like that. So yeah, that should be your priority, but I can't think of, you know, anything else other than, you know, potentially sending an item to someone who's married and their wife doesn't appreciate what you've done, and then you like get the aftermath of that in some respect. But no, protecting your identity and your location is paramount, really.
Yes. So much great information here, and you've gone to just the depths of everything. I mean, whilst the time frame that we have, a very limited time frame. But before I let you go, where can we find you?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I could literally talk about this all day, and that's why I'm like, no one is more surprised than me that I'm on episode, I don't know, 88 of my podcast. And how am I still talking about this? But yeah, pantysellingschool.com is, you know, my main website. There is obviously my pricing guide, which I'll send to you. I have free training there. I have, you know, like 300 blog posts. So there's so much information there. I do recommend obviously listening to my podcast. Anyone that's really serious about considering this should, you know, request to join my group, which is Sellers Before Fellas. We're on Discord. There's like 370 of us in there. So it's quite a busy group.
Awesome.
And then obviously if you are a sex worker and you feel like either you would be able to contribute to freelancing on the SW Rolodex or accessing freelancers, then please join. Like it's free to join. You don't have to pay anything. Just come and check it out, because that's my new baby and I want to promote it.
That's excellent. Dalma, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was so much fun just chatting and just really learning so much about this aspect of sex work that I really just am super clueless about. So thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you for having me on.
I'm so glad we can connect, and hopefully this episode can provide some insight and also just educate people on panty selling. And if you want to get into it, then there are tons of resources out there, and I guess if you need, you can also join Dalma's Discord group. So
Yeah, or just message me on Instagram. Tends to be where I hang out the most, and that's at the Panty Selling Podcast, and I answer every single question that comes my way.
Awesome.
So yeah, if there is anything that we didn't cover today, you're more than welcome to contact me and ask me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's Strip by Sia on Instagram, online, everywhere, and Sia Steph is my personal Instagram. So at me if you like the episode. If you didn't like it, don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe. Give me 5 stars on Apple. That'd be great. And there'll be another new episode next Sunday. Thank you, Dalma.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Davern.